Okay, so I'm getting caught up on some reviews that I've been sorely lacking on the last couple of months that I've wanted to do. So this is starting it off, and I've got like six of them that I want lined out to do, and this is going to be one of two of them, which is going to be a very long review slash rant, which might come up at some point in this. And I'm going to start this off with this baby. This is Ultimate Comics Divided We Fall, United We Stand. In an event, but not really an event, for the Ultimate Marvel Universe from last year. This one is going to be a bit of a two-sided review too, as well, and a lot of things that I'm going to talk about I have to do background on before I can get to the stories. This one's a very complicated beast. Um, this is sort of the equivalent of the Ultimate Civil War, but the fact that it actually is a nationwide civil war as opposed to just superheroes fighting superheroes over a registration act. And this is a lot of culmination of things that have been built up since this new Ultimates Comics line relaunched. Because I haven't really seen the books bounce off of each other as much as I have since they re-put these titles back out in 2011. So there's a lot of stuff that you kind of have to pay attention to understand what's going on. The basic gist of this is that the country just descends into complete pandemonium and chaos after largely attributed to Reed Richards from Hickman's first two Ultimates volumes, where he went crazy and decided to blow up Washington, and this sends the United States into a complete and utter panic. A lot of states, including Texas and California, secede from the U.S., and we have a bunch of Hydra bases which start popping up across the country, and the Civil War, which could rein in a little bit of, the superheroes and S.H.I.E.L.D. could represent the North, and, the breakoffs will represent the South. But instead, usually when we have these allegorical type stories, they play off as just being outsiders influencing events going on, and that's pretty much what this is. With the X-Men side, we have Kitty Pryde, who was leading what was left of some of Xavier's mutants, along with the Human Torch and a bunch of other mutants, as an underground resistance in New York, fighting William Stryker. She manages to kill him at the end of the story, but then find out that he's a mutant, and his personality somehow gets grafted with a master mold and a bunch of sentinels, which go on a nationwide mutant killing spree. They eventually turn on human targets, and it even goes so far that a bunch of anti-mutant militant groups have popped up, round up the mutants in camps, and get ready to execute them. A lot of that scenario plays out, and with Miles as Spider-Man, he's coming off of just getting into the groove of wanting to fill Peter Parker's shoes, and he's still kind of reeling from the death of his uncle, who he fought actually in the second volume, and now we're all at this point, and shit's just hitting the fan. This is collected in between issues 13 to 18 of all three of the series, The Ultimates, Spider-Man, and X-Men. The first half of those issues are under the Divided We Fall banner, and the other half are the United We Stand. So I'm just going to kind of break this down, talk about the X-Men first, the Ultimates, and then we'll wrap it up with Spider-Man. I'm going to say the art on a lot of the books in this ranges from with the Ultimates, which ranges in a pseudo Brian Hitch wannabe type style, to just a very lazily drawn Humberto Ramos style. So there's not really much in the great way of art in here. Unfortunately, I would like some of the interior art to reflect the cover, but we're not going to see that. What happens with the X-Men in this story is that the best part about this is the character development that we get furthering into the leader that Kitty Pryde is becoming in this story. There's a bit of an offshoot where she is joined by Nick Fury, who kind of still is reeling from the guilt that, I didn't do enough to help the mutant cause. And it's kind of him mentoring her on how to be a proper leader and helping to fight off the Sentinels and round up some of the mutants from the internment camps that they've been put in. This is really good, at least for the Nick Fury and the Kitty Pryde side. Rogue, Iceman, and Jimmy Hudson, who is somehow Wolverine's son, is certainly a lot more interesting than Daken. Those characters are kind of underplayed in this, and it's just a fast-paced action brawl all the way through. What character development we do have in this is very little. It's mostly just we get from point A to point B with each issue, and there's going to be a lot of action happening. Especially with the way that the Liberations goes in the mutant camps, as well as just any other major developments that happen outside of this. Which is going to be kind of detracting to the Ultimates and the Spider-Man in this, as well as that the series has going to take on some symptoms of Clone Wars, where you'll be following certain characters, and sometimes shit'll happen outside of the books that it doesn't include in there, but it will refer to, and you will have a sense that you've missed something major, which is one of the really big downfalls of all the stories collected in this. But as it stands, this is going to be, each of these stories are going to be the weakest arc introduced into all of the titles. There are some good concepts for all of the stories in here, but then just some really bad execution on a lot of them. The X-Men kind of suffers for this, and this will become their weakest story arc, even though I think that this is the best Ultimate X-Men series that I've seen out of this line. So there is a bit of a downfall to that. I really like what they do with Kitty in this. She's really forced to grow up. She's been forced to grow up ever since Ultimatum happened, and she's kind of taken on living underground, sort of becoming the mother figure, and she kind of emerges as the new Charles Xavier in this, which is a fairly interesting concept. So that's really about the biggest plus to the X-Men side is what they do with Kitty in this. When we get over to the Ultimates, this is going to be kind of a pseudo rehash of Ultimates 2, but just on a much larger scale. Cap, who's been absent for the first 2 volumes because he's still feeling guilty about what happened to Peter, he gets a sense of urgency in him to come back. Eventually, we'll team up with the rest of the Ultimates, and it'll be them fighting the new Ultimate version of Hydra, which conceptually, since they are sort of the forces of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the U.S. government, they decide to model Hydra as a bunch of off-the-grid freedom fighter type groups. A lot of anti-U.S. sentiment that's played on in this. And conceptually, this was a really good job. But then they kind of just decide to fall back on the Ultimates 2 motif, where we have a lot of major action scenes, and then we get the revelation that Thor's son, who has wound up becoming a Loki ripoff, is the one responsible for a lot of the shit that's heated up in the aftermath of the Reed Richards stuff. That's put out there, it's dealt with, and that's pretty much the gist of the Ultimates in this. I think really about the only interesting development that they play up out of this is that somebody gets a video of Cap fighting, because not just with the Hydra stuff, but we have a lot of wannabe totalitarians that just sort of pop up in their own states. Like we have Detroit, and this guy just pops up, and he kind of pulls a Fidel Castro and declares himself the leader of Detroit, and then the Ultimates wind up going in there and just taking him down. somebody catches a video of this, and then Cap's name is thrown on a ballot to re-elect a new U.S. president because the guy that took over really couldn't handle the pressure, and Cap winds up becoming president at the end of all this, which is kind of a cool concept, actually. As to whether or not that he plays out well as a politician who's more interested in playing superhero afterwards, you just kind of got to stick with it and see what's what. But even though some people might be a little bit bored by the politics in it, it is at least progressive, which is one of the things that I've always liked about the Ultimates, is that when shit does happen, it does have some lasting consequences, unlike a lot of the stuff from the 616 universe, which really doesn't stand to be all that bad. You can just snap your fingers and things could be back to normal at the end of a major event. So that's kind of why I said it's a two-sided review. It's progressive, but it's poorly executed in some ways. Then we round this all off with Spider-Man. This is also going to be kind of a problem, which is kind of why I complain about the format of the trade as well, is because that this will kind of force you to double dip on about 3 or 4 issues which came out with Volume 3 of Bendis' Spider-Man that you're going to have to read over. After he gets through fighting his uncle, there's not really much of a guilt trip or a lingering character development that we give him time to just kind of sit and lament over the fact that that happened. He jumps right into playing superhero. Him and Cap kind of go back and forth for a couple of issues, and Cap eventually is hesitant enough to take him on, and Miles winds up joining the Ultimates. I will say that at least the stuff with Cap is taken care of, and the little animosity in between Miles and Spider-Woman is dealt with to an extent in this story. But there is a time, probably the best thing that you're going to see is Miles actually fighting some bad guys, as well as he winds up taking on a giant woman by himself, which is pretty cool. But yeah, there's not really much character-wise in all of this. Outside of Kitty Pryde, probably the character who gets the most screen time that I was surprised at in this entire thing is Miles' father. Because he's kind of looking for his son, and then when all of the rioting and stuff is going on in New York, there's actually a point with him and a couple of Hydra agents that's really taken to a dark place, and it kind of furthers some character conflict for him that's going to pop up and play a role later on in the story, which is kind of interesting. But when all's said and done with the story, again, it's the twofold matter of the things. It's really good concept-wise because we do have consequences which are played out, and this will kind of set up for some other things that is yet to come in the stories. But as you're reading it, it's going to have that kind of Clone Wars feel where you feel like you missed something, or for the fact that it's just a very underwhelming read on a character basis, and that the entire thing is just an excuse to be a summer blockbuster, action-y, explosion-y comic book event. I would recommend this to people who are hardcore Ultimates fans, or Ultimate Universe fans. If you're kind of a lapsed reader or someone who's kind of thinking about getting back into the Ultimate stuff because you've heard good things about what came before this, this is really not the place to start. I would say go back and at least wiki what's been going on, and then if you absolutely decide that you want to jump on with the story, then you can at least have some accurate foreknowledge of what leads up to this and kind of how things started coming up before the chaos you decide to read about in the story. Otherwise, I would not recommend this right now. I have absolutely no idea what they're going to be doing as far as individual trades for these titles, where you could just probably pick one title and just kind of skim through this and move on to the next thing, because Marvel has made no indication that they're ready to do individual trades for each of the series with just this happening in their own corner